That is credits. Game over. Although it's not the end, but it is the end. I'm I'm not sure if I should give my thoughts here when there's still an epilogue to go through. But I also have the problem of I didn't really write down my thoughts for this game. So, I'm kind of at a disadvantage here. But let's see what I can talk about. Probably don't have too much to say, but let's see what happens. See what happens. Alright, so WitchSpring R has been conquered. Woot woot. For my first impressions, which were based off of day 1 and 2, combat seems simple, and I think it could benefit from more layers of complexity. Despite this, I am enjoying it so far, but time will tell if that is because of how defensive I built myself. The narrative developments have definitely not been of interest to me. I'm not very compelled to care about a character whose sole motivation is to eat pie. Not typically in the wheelhouse of characters. I want to dominate the story. And for my overall thoughts, I surprisingly enjoyed this one. Certainly way more than it has any business uh, to be enjoyed by me, and certainly way more than I could have ever expected. Now, that is with the caveat that um, it it's mostly after a certain point in the story where things start making a positive turn for me. Like the very beginning of the game is very much how I felt in my first impressions. I I really don't care for Pieberry as a character. I didn't care for her motivations. I didn't care for her dialogue. I didn't care for her scenes that she participated in. Um, I I didn't care for the narrative surrounding the character. Um, it just it's too cutesy and childish, and it feels like it just doesn't hold very much substance. And so I was kind of having a rough time with running around as this character that like I want no association with, basically. But the that narrative, like maybe I grew dull to it, but also like the narrative did start growing into something that was more interesting to me as the war started progressing and as we met the death squad and things like that. Like we started focusing in on um, other motivations and other characters that made it so that Pieberry's personality wasn't necessarily as like grating to deal with, because now she's dealing with more serious characters that have more serious motivations and things like that, and she kind of toned down the I'm happy all the time and I just want to eat pie and strawberries. um so uh that was kind of surprising and a really nice transition, I suppose. um it's sort of unfortunate because like getting through the opening portions of this game is really a big struggle. It's very, very difficult um, for me to find the motivation to overcome a character like Pieberry. But you know, it ended up sticking the mid to landing late game. So you know, there's that. Um, that's kind of all of the thoughts that I've written down. But story, was it satisfying? Uh, I I will say yes on this. The again, like the beginning, it kind of sucks to go through the beginning of this game and deal with Pieberry, but um, a lot of how things were weaved in, and a lot of how um, characters, I guess, progressed and whatnot. You know, it felt pretty nice. I do think that there could have been a lot of moments that could have expanded on things, like Justice joining the Death Squad, for example. I think he could have wrestled with that decision, or we could have seen him wrestle with that decision for far longer. And so I wish there was that going on. Um, and yeah, but ultimately it was pretty satisfying. The ending, like there was quite a few twists in the ending there that was kind of interesting to interact with. You know, it's like, oh, Crown is actually the bad guy. Oh, wait, no, Crown is the bad guy, but he's also the guardian animal of the spring. Like, oh man, oh wait, the Pope is not actually the bad guy. You know, like it was just kind of like twist after twist after twist, which was very interesting to deal with. With because of how this game started, and even moments of how it progressed, I was definitely very much expecting a simplistic and um I don't know, like a very bare bones type of storytelling. Like I didn't think we were going to get into anything that would be like, "Oh, you know, I wasn't actually expecting that to happen." Like it predictable. I think the way that this game opens up, it feels like you can predict everything that's going to happen, but you know, there were a couple of things along the way where I'm like, oh, okay, okay. So that was nice. I think ultimately that created a very satisfying experience for the story. Did it feel complete? It does feel complete. Um, I'm actually the ending section there was extremely long. It was like 2 hours, which is far more than I expected. But yeah, it felt complete, surprisingly. What was the pacing? So the pacing of this game, I think, is where some rough starts start to show up because again, like you're Pieberry and you're on a mission to go taste pies that are the greatest pies in the world because you want to uh, have the same taste as the pies that your mom used to make you in your dreams, and like it's just a ridiculous story. And so you really are just wasting your time doing a lot of silly and goofy things. And that happens for a really long time. And then there's moments where like you're doing something serious and then you transition to do something silly or not really important. And it's kind of rough times. And then yeah, like there are There was like a pretty big reveal and plot dump at the end that definitely could have been spread out a little bit more throughout the game. I don't think we needed to know the motivations of the what do we call him? I wanted to say spring lords, but the gods, I guess. Feel like we could have gotten that sooner. Black Joe could have revealed a lot more sooner. Um, we theoretically we could have revealed the big bad a lot sooner than that too, and kind of spread out that little section. Like maybe you kill the Pope at 75, 80, 85% of the game, and then the remaining portion of the game is all about Crown, and then transitioning Crown into Jude. That probably would have uh, done a nicer job. And then with that, like that extra stuff that you're adding in, you can just completely tone down all of the I'm pie berry and I want to eat pies portion of the game. And actually the Anna portions of the game might might actually be worse than the I'm pie berry and I want to go eat pies portion of the game. I get what they wanted to do with Anna, but Anna's interactions, I really didn't like her character all that much. Um, she didn't she didn't feel like she was participating in things that thought I saw a bug. She didn't feel like she was participating in things that felt important, and part of that is because of Pie Berry, but um, it just felt like screen time with her was being wasted a lot, and I I know this is gonna kind of not sound great, but I don't think the payoff for Anna really made Anna's inclusion um, good. The best thing that Anna was involved with was sacrificing herself to get rid of that Red Knight guy. Like that was amazing. But to have to sit through everything else Anna related, I don't know if I rock with that. Um, I kind of gave various thoughts on the story, um, and all other stuff. Um, um, let's see, gameplay mechanics and design. What gameplay elements stand out? So the the like I guess the best way for me to just say this is the saving grace of this game for me was the gameplay and kind of how they section things off to I guess have you engage in various things, which was kind of a surprise for me because they have like encounters that have timers for respawns and things like that, and that's not something that I'm necessarily used to seeing. So that was sort of kind of fresh for me. Um, but there were just actually just kind of interesting things to do all throughout the game. Like I could train my character to improve stats, and that was kind of cool. I do think that the distribution of the stats that you can improve probably should have had more or different combinations in some places. Um, I I think the mini game system for the stats is also kind of neat. It's also neat that you don't have to do the mini games if you don't want to. You can just, automatically do it and just get the stats, and maybe you'll get a little bonus, maybe you won't. So that was really neat about the training. Um, there were crafting mechanics in the game, and this was something that I actually enjoyed quite a bit. I liked that I could craft spells and equipment and potions and whatnot, and I liked that I had to go fight these enemies to go get those, but also there were these little sparklies on the ground, and I could just go get the sparklies. And when I go to sleep, Black Joe can just pick up some of the sparklies for me. Um, uh, it was kind of weird though because I think you have to pick up the sparkly be to make Black Joe be able to then pick it up afterwards. But then after Black Joe picks it up, you can't pick up that sparkly anymore. I don't know how that system necessarily works, but you couldn't just pick up the sparkly once and then like infinitely get that sparkly back. Oh, I don't know how that goes, but yeah, like the crafting was pretty cool. Um, I will say that the UI for selecting the books that you want to go through, I wasn't necessarily a fan of that. Uh, One, all of the books change positionings depending on the new books that you get, which is also something that happens in the pet system, which I didn't like. Um, but also, there are UI elements that say, like, hey, you can craft something, but it's something that you either can't craft another thing of or you don't want to craft another thing of. So I kind of wish there was a, like mark this book as read so that it doesn't show that you have something to craft again. Um, but yeah, uh, going around killing like super powerful dudes to get their super powerful drops to go craft super powerful things is very cool. Um, the like stat system of the game is also kind of cool in that you're a witch, but they give you an opportunity to play a strength build or a magic build. Or you can kind of hybridize between them. And, like all throughout this, I've been saying, like, I kind of regret not going a strength build. And I do think that they provide more tools and more cool things for the strength build, but I can see why they did that. And that's because if you're doing a strength build, you're not really going to be casting any of the spells. And there's plenty of spells to be utilizing. And you don't want to cast a spell and do 100 damage when you can auto attack for 2,500 damage. So that's probably why they made the training system the way that it was. And I can see that justification now. But earlier on, I was just like, man, I should have went the strength build because the strength build gets all the cool stuff. But I didn't make that connection that actually, all the magic spells that you get to craft and stuff like that, that's all the cool stuff. There's an upgrading weapon system in this game, which I think is a little awkward, but um, it was also like it's awkward on the side of the swords because you have to engage in this totally and completely different other mini game that is honestly kind of confusing to me, and I don't know if I got it 100% understood, but um, like it's cool that you can just improve your weapons and and upgrade them to totally different tiers, and they offer different bonuses and benefits. You can go a defensive build like I did, which allowed me to fight enemies that I probably had no business fighting because my um, defensiveness was much higher than going like a glass cannon build with all the other weapon properties and things like that. So um, I liked the weapon systems, and I actually think that they provided a lot of variety in the types of weapons that you can get on the strength side. On the magic side, I feel like they could have diversified that more. I don't think there was actually a lot of staves to choose from. That being said, well, I say it that way because once you choose a path, there's only like one path to go to for upgrading the weapon. And that makes it feel like there's only so many weapons that are viable in the game. When in actuality, like weapons can, a lot of the weapons have maybe more than one upgrade path. And so you can kind of choose where you want to go and all that other stuff. I definitely, I definitely do feel that there should have been more magical weapons, though. Um, I would have really liked to see a sword that was purely magic based. That would have been really cool. And a staff that was purely offensive, strength based. I think that would have been really cool as well, because then you get to start going into different build combinations and whatnot, and explore some other things. Pets. Pets were probably among my favorite mechanics in this game. Ever since I got my first pet, I like that's just all that I wanted to do was just go find more pets and add them to my roster and then summon all these pets in combat and then just have them do all kinds of crazy cool things and then build my affinity with the pets so that they can do even more cool things and their stats go up and all that other good stuff. Like the pet system, I do think that there's room for improvement on the pet system. I think that like pets don't necessarily contribute much outside of combat, and there could have been a little bit more there. The affinity system could have been a little bit more involved, other than just giving them what kind of feels like random food. Um, Also, uh, yeah, the like Madagar says, summoning your pets during combat needed some sort of preset function. I think they're like, I guess the best way to put it is there needed to be way more quality of life with the pet system. Um, I should have been a like I, the pets rearrange their order in various ways throughout the game based off of what pets you're getting, and that in of itself is very obnoxious. Um, Having your pet be unsummoned in a lot of what feels like random situations, from like cutscenes to story moments to moving on to different areas and things like that. Like that's really annoying, especially because there's an actual cost to summoning a pet outside of combat. So making it so that you can just summon a pet outside of combat probably erases a lot of the frustration that you have, because like if you think about it, there's not really a lot of cost to summoning a pet outside of combat as it is now, because you can just teleport back home, sleep, and then teleport back, and boom, you have your pet. You can go to a crystal or whatever. But the the necessity to do that is too much. Um, when you could just remove that and just say, okay, just summon whatever pet you want. Um, Also, being able to set it up so that your default pet outside of combat is one pet, and then the pets that you want to summon in combat are different than the pets outside of combat, would have been a huge change, because I want to run around real fast on one pet, but I don't want that pet in combat because it freaking sucks. So the ideal scenario is for me to not either swap it out, which is bleh, I miss out on some turns, or I just don't go into combat with that pet and I just run around with whatever I have, which is also not necessarily ideal. Um, and yeah, I think there's some other things about the pet system that I was having some rough times with, but yeah, like I I liked the pets overall. Like that system really resonated with me, and I do kind of wish that maybe the pets kind of leveled up better. I wish Boar Junior. Well, actually, maybe it's because I was a strength. I wasn't a strength build. That that could be it. I should check. I should check. Let me see what happens here. Current ending has been saved. Transfer and start new beginning. Epilogue has been added. Catch up with other characters following the ending or learn more about the world. Okay, they just add everybody. We just hit continue. Okay. Uh, can't load from here. Back to the title screen. Oh man, I forgot what I was talking about. Uh, oh, um, so yeah, like I wish that Or Junior, for example, actually scaled better. Maybe if I equip a a more strength based weapon, this will work out better. Maybe. Okay, so some of them are based off of strength, and other ones are not. This guy is uh something like that. Ooh, with no summon cost, you are better. I didn't realize that. Hmm. But yeah, so I would have loved to see more range with the pets. Gosh, some of these guys get really, really strong with this weapon. So that would have been really nice. Let's see. I think that's everything here. Honestly, that might be all of that. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much all the gameplay elements. Um, for combat, um, combat was surprisingly something that I like. It is simple, but as you start fighting more complicated and more devastating enemies, you start, like, at least for me in my defensive build, um, you start encountering some very interesting ways where you have to engage with battles differently, and that that really opened up the combat for me. And it made it way better than it probably actually is, just because of the build that I went. Because like earlier on, it's just, like, oh, I'm throwing spells and doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm throwing a fireball, lightning spell, whatever. But when you're fighting the more difficult, higher HP enemies, it's like, okay, I might have to guard on my very first turn just so that I don't get popped, which will send me down a downward spiral because then I'll have to use Black Joe to heal me, which will put him on cooldown for 2 turns, which means that I won't be able to go on the offensive while that's happening. So I have to guard or use my other defensive options, which can only be used once. So I have to time them perfectly optimally for when the big attacks are going to be happening. And like it just becomes way more strategy oriented than I ever thought it was going to be. And I enjoyed like puzzling that out, especially for the ancient lightning dragon. Like I had no business fighting that enemy. But when I reached that point, just like, okay, let me start messing around with my tools, and how can I get my tools to give me just enough of an advantage to overcome this challenge. And just going through that was a lot of fun. So the combat is cool. You can change weapons in combat. You can summon your pets in combat, and your pets do all kinds of crazy damage, and have some utilities associated with them. You have a ton of spells, and there's this system where you have 3 spells that you can kind of like improve and make them better than just the standard tier of spells. But if you don't want to cast those, you can also cast any other spell that you've crafted. So you don't just have to cast those 3 spells, which is a really nice system. Um, Also, that system, the spells also move around a lot, and I don't like that. I wish you could like just choose like I want to ice spell, and then it shows all the ice spells, and you choose one of those or whatever. Um, what else? Um, I like that guard has more to it than just like I'm gonna take a reduced amount of damage. I like that you get uh, hit points and mana back, and I like that there are some guards that reduce the defensiveness a little bit, but give you a promise of like an offensive trait or maybe some sort of utility once the guard ends, so that you can like set up a really nice turn. I like that there's this crit system where every 4 turns you'll get a guaranteed crit, and so that's like another thing that you can plan around to do more damage. The strength build has all kinds of crazy stuff going on with it, where like you have magical traces when you hit enemies or deal damage or whatever it is with spells. You get these magical traces, and then when you do a melee attack, uh, you expend some of those to do way more damage, which again creates this really cool opportunity for like a hybrid build. Um, yeah, there's just like the combat is so simple. It's incredibly simple, and there's no complexity to it. And then you realize that actually this combat is kind of complex. There's a lot of stuff going on, and that's a really neat experience to have in a game where you're like, combat, into like, oh my gosh, this combat is great. So, super, 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 super surprising. every pet uh, pre the most recent DLC covers all types of playstyles. Pets even make combat more intuitive. Um, so I don't, I didn't really feel like I got a lot of variety from the pets, which might be a criticism I have for it. So, like, this Tiarit seems like just like, granted, I didn't use a lot of these pets, mind you. I'm going off of their stats and the spells that I'm looking at and like the cooldown for them. But like I looked at Tiarit and I was just like, you cost 3 and you're not better than Brilliant. So I don't really see why I would want to use you. And then there's Asen, who might be a strength oriented character or enemy. Let me see. Um, like forgetting where to go. Not really. I like this guy. I don't know. This guy has to be just completely worthless. But I guess you're supposed to get this guy a lot sooner than I did. So like this guy completely worthless. He lets you get to ride around in water, but you have to figure out how to get this guy. And I did not figure out how to get this guy without cheating. So Tyrion seems like Tyrion does crazy damage. So I'm like, hey, that sounds good to me. And you cost 3. And then Steam Golem. I Steam Golem was good because I learned that Backpack Spider was good. And Backpack Spider, like I passed up on Backpack Spiders. Like I don't need area damage. Like that's not going to work for me. So I chose Dwarf Thor because single target hit hard. Like that sounded great. But Backpack Spider taught me that hey, I'm going to be doing uh the same, like I'm attacking 3 times and those 3 hits can be against the same target. And that damage is going to be more than the single target damage that other people are going to be doing. So I was like, wow. So when Steam Golem 3 came about, it was like, hey, I'm going to be shooting people for 6,000 damage, which is like uh, 2 to 3, I guess, 1,000 more damage than everybody else is doing. Sometimes 1,000, which was crazy. Luca, is a riding pet for me. I really don't feel like Luca is worth using at all. Luca's very fast, but I don't think turn pass is useful for the build that I wanted to go. Where again, I built defensively, so I want to shield up, and then I want to let my pets basically do most of the damage while I'm keeping myself healthy and maybe throwing out a spell here and there. Brilliant, absolutely insane. Probably one of the best pets. Um, I think Brilliant is crazy. Backpack Spider, I also think is probably one of the best pets. Just does a lot of damage. Kariko seemed pretty good. I really like Kariko. I didn't get the there was another one that I actually learned that I could um mind control it, but I did not mind control. I thought it was actually like a mistake because I already had Kariko, but life is hard. Board Junior, Board Junior actually was pretty worthless to me because I went the magic build, and Seed Spirit actually turned out to be very, very useful for me for the majority of my early game. It took me forever to get Seed Spirit though, because just uh, would not get mind controlled. Dwarf Thor seemed really, really good. I was very pleased with Dwarf Thor. Aslan was also one of the best. I think Team Brilliant and Aslan was my like go to strategy for a long time there. Lighting Bell, I feel like Lighting Bell is just overcosted. I like the idea of Lighting Bell because Bell armor is really nice. I think this is a really useful thing that you could have on fights. And then sometimes you're also going to be doing damage, and it's going to be pretty good damage. Um, the problem is like that damage is not going to be equivalent to having an Aslan in the fight. And so you're building up a defensive pet to give you HP back. Let's just say once per turn. It might be a little bit more than that. It might be actually a little bit less than that because of the super move. But like you build up HP once per turn. Um, and maybe you take a little bit of reduced damage, yada yada. Is that worth a summon cost of 4? I don't think so. Tyrese seemed actually insane. Like I just used this one on a whim, and it was like throwing like 8 fireballs or something. I was like, holy cow, this one's insane. So that one seemed pretty good. Justice is the bomb diggity. He cost 0. That was great. And Nikomis seems pretty good. I did not wasn't able to bump this one up because I didn't want to wait for the ice giant to respawn. But yeah, like I really like the idea of Lighting Bell, but if it costs 1 or 0, you'd probably see me use Lighting Bell way more than I did. And then there's a couple of pets that I missed out on that I maybe the epilogue will give me an opportunity to go through those. For dungeons, I don't have anything to say about dungeons. I probably should just remove that section. Cardinal sins. I um I think I can say side quests are required to progress the main story. That one or main story missions are side quests. One or both of those applies, but I'm struggling to think of the exact example. It might just be main story missions or side quests. Miscellaneous sound and music. Music was quite enjoyable in some places. I'm definitely gonna have to listen to this soundtrack and see what I can get out of this one because like that Pope church castle music thing, like that one really got my ears to perk up. And there's been multiple tracks where I'm just like, hey, I like this. Voice acting, I thought the voice acting was really nice. Um, I I'm glad that Mana Dryad somehow convinced me to just do the Korean voice because Pieberry's voice was less squeaky than the Japanese voice, and I actually appreciate that. I do think that maybe I haven't listened to both voices for the entirety of the game, but there were some characters where I kind of wish that their voices were a little bit different. Specifically, uh, Jude as a dragon. Him sounding exactly like Crown is a little weird, but it is what it is. I was hoping it would be a little bit more gruff. For graphics, I think the graphics of this game are interesting. It's not necessarily my style, especially like the chibi look of characters. Um, it presents some awkwardness for me because you look at someone like the Pope and it's just like, you know, you're the evil one, huh? You look so silly, but you're the evil guy. Um, so the art style is doesn't necessarily lend itself so much for me, but whatever. Um, but like the various visuals of the game, the environments, the monsters, the enemies, all of that stuff looks really nice. I like vibrant colors in games, and I think this game offered a lot of that, and so I appreciate that a lot. Also for the voice acting part, not necessarily directly related to voice acting, but Black Joe is a wonderful character in this game, and probably my favorite uh, character throughout. He offers a great deal of like comedy and I guess like foresight on things that are happening, and he was just very pleasant to have around. For other, is the game worth recommending? I think I could see myself recommending this game. Now, like it would have to be with some caveats of, hey, you're going to deal with this ridiculous premise of you're playing as a little girl who just wants to go get pies, and you're gonna have to overcome that fact. But if you make it past that, or if you even end up enjoying that, I think this game is going to be elevated pretty high. Um, and yeah. And for the last thing, if the developer is watching, I might go take a look at some of the other WitchSpring games because maybe I can see myself playing those if they're similar to this one. Um, I could actually think that that's a possibility. I like the combat system that this game offered. I ended up liking how the story, like what the story turned into. Um, like this game kind of heavily grew on me, and that's kind of cool. There was something else that I wanted to say. I forgot. Life is hard. Dang it. Well, I think that's all that I got for that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I will not be back tomorrow. Uh, no stream tomorrow, but on Thursday I will be back at 7 a.m. Pacific time, and I will do the epilogue, and we'll see what goes on with that. And maybe we'll finish the stream on Thursday, and I'll get Friday off too. Hey. But yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. See ya the next time I see you. Peace.